If you enjoy listening to The Edge, support them by subscribing to The Edge on iTunes, Stitcher, and you can listen through the iHeartRadio app. Get busy listening.
Hello, it is Mark Thompson. It is a pleasure to have you here. I know it's a little time between episodes, but that gives you time to reflect and maybe listen to 2 or 3 million of the other podcasts that crop up every week. Cool stuff in the show today. A conversation with Mark Harris, who just did the book about Mike Nichols. It's called Mike Nichols, A Life. Director Mike Nichols, brilliant, associated with legendary film. From The Graduate to Carnal Knowledge to Catch-22 to Birdcage. And Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? That was actually his first film. He did it in black and white with Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. And the just deceased George Segal. He also directed Broadway. Mike Nichols, an amazing influence over entertainment, even preceding everything I just mentioned with a robust comedy career with Elaine May. But his life story is amazing, and we'll talk a little bit about it with Mark Harris, who, as I say, just has done this biography. Then J. Elvis Weinstein joins, the original voice of Servo, documentary filmmaker, comic. We'll kick things around. Both he and producer of the KGO radio show, fresh-faced producer Albert, the fresh-faced young man, the millennial. He will join that conversation, though that's still to come. And then we welcome in Dr. Roger Minkow. He's an inventor who's had amazing success, and he has a freakish story to tell about cancer, about health, and about the supernatural. Thank you for being here. You know, since the pandemic hit, we leave all the money aside. We just love to produce the show and have you listen. So thank you for subscribing. Thank you for recommending. And now, let's get started.
This is The Edge.
The advantage, it means.
They let guys just spit on me for no reason.
That's horrible.
Is there some comfort in uncertainty, do you think?
You're a degenerate.
Because Australian Shepherds need action.
Wow. Yeah.
This is The Edge.
That's a self-loathing term that I use.
Oh, got it.
So excited to have Mark Harris joining us. He's got a new biography of one of the seminal figures in entertainment, Mike Nichols. Mark, welcome, first of all. Mark Harris,
thank
everyone.
you so much.
Anyone who has appreciated film and theater and comedy has to love Mike Nichols and his work. He was such an innovative creature in terms of the stage and comedy. Give us just a snapshot. He was an early improv performer with Elaine May, was he not?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up comedy because I think a lot of people know Mike Nichols as a director, you know, of things like The Graduate on screen and Working Girl, and on stage he did The Odd Couple, but all of that was preceded by this really remarkable career as a comedy performer with Elaine May, where together they kind of invented a form of improv comedy and brought a new, more sophisticated, more observational kind of humor to audiences than they had seen before.
And it's interesting, that was a meteoric rise. I mean, weren't those two celebrated? They went to Broadway in a very short time. It was really embraced by everyone.
It was all very, very quick. I mean, in late 1957, they were still sort of struggling to figure out where their next meal was going to come from. And in the next 5 years, they just rose up and up and up through New York comedy clubs first, and then national TV appearances and comedy albums, and finally this run of 8 or 9 months as the stars of the Broadway show, An Evening with Mike Nichols and Elaine May, that everybody wanted to see. And then by 1961 or 1962, it was really all over.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I mean, I was before my time, but I was certainly aware of Nichols and May, and then she pulled away from the team, right?
Yeah, that's right. They wanted sort of different things in life, and particularly toward the end of the run of the Broadway show, Elaine May felt that she was just getting really tired of doing the same material every night over and over again. Mike was not. He says he would have happily continued sort of giving the people what they wanted, but Elaine was really hungry to do new things and write new things, and so they went their separate ways for a little while. She wrote a play that she wanted him to star in, and that was when they really had their rupture. They worked on it out of town in Philadelphia. It was supposed to go to Broadway. She didn't like his performance. He didn't like her script, and for a time, for about a year and a half, they really had this bad break, and then eventually patched it up and didn't really get together again as a performing comedy team, except on special occasions, but stayed in each other's lives personally and professionally for the next 50-plus years.
That is another great story. There's so many, B stories and C stories within this remarkable life. We're talking to Mark Harris. His new book is Mike Nichols, A Life. And so this magnificent director who had this meteoric rise with Elaine May, and then that split that you just described, he went on and directed, again, at a very early age, some of the greatest franchises, I'm talking about entertainment franchises at the time, in his generation.
Well, it's so interesting to me now to think of Mike at 32 years old thinking, well, my career's over. I was what he described as the less talented half of a comedy duo, and now the person I worked with is gone, and I don't know what I'm going to do next. I have to come up with a new profession, and that turned out to be directing. First in theater, his first play was Neil Simon's Barefoot in the Park, and he became like the guy who helped Neil Simon become the toast of Broadway through the 1960s and early 70s. And then
didn't he win a Tony Award for that, Mark? Didn't that win a Tony, or he won a Tony for something early on?
He did. Nichols won a Tony his very first time out as best director of a play, and then won another one his second time out when he directed The Odd Couple.
That's just extraordinary. I mean, this guy was on such a fast track. And I'm going to double back in a moment to talk about his origin story, which you detail apparently so richly in your book. I can't wait to get into your book. It just hasn't arrived yet. I'm sorry. I just got on it. We booked you. And usually I like to get into somebody's book before I talk to them. But I want to double back to his origin story in a moment. But then he made this move from legit theater, that is Broadway, and directing and being apparently celebrated in that arena, to film. And similarly, he took on these audacious projects, right? Didn't he do Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
Right. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf was his first movie, which, in every possible sense is diving into the deep end of the pool. I mean, I think in some ways he thought it would not be a huge leap for him because it had been a play. He knew how to direct a play. It was just 4 actors. It was just one set. But it turned out to be this giant film that helped end the production code that restricted movie content in the United States. And of course, it starred Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, who were, the 2 biggest stars in the world at the time, and certainly the most famous couple. So he jumps into that. It becomes this major, major success. And then instead of having a sophomore slump, he follows it with The Graduate.
Yeah, that's extraordinary. And, at the time, this film, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, it was really intense. I mean, super intense. The verbiage is what you're talking about, Mark, right? Weren't there a lot of, there was a lot of profanity and there's a lot of sexuality, referenced
right.
Anyway. And it was in black and white, as I recall.
Right. It was in black and white at a time when movies were really, really moving away from black and white and to color. But it also, yes, had this rough language. There were words in it that we would consider like fairly mild now, but that had never been heard on a screen before, and it landed on screen in 1966 just at this interesting moment when the production code, which governed all the content of movies, was ending, but before what we have now, which is the rating system, was starting. And so it really, that movie is incredibly important in the transition from what we think of as old movies to more modern movies.
Well, and then he went on, of course, Carnal Knowledge, The Graduate, you mentioned, the full list. Working Girl, The Birdcage. I auditioned for The Birdcage. I met Mike Nichols at an audition for The Birdcage. And
wow.
this is the best part, Mark Harris. I walk in, and I'm very excited. It's a very small part. Okay, so I didn't expect even that I'd be auditioning before Mike Nichols. And there he is. Wow. I said, sir, it's such an honor to meet you. This is such an honor just to, you're just a legendary name in our industry. He said, please meet Elaine May. And I turned. And when I'd opened the door, she was hidden by the door. But I turned, and then I did the worst thing you can do. I went, oh, my God, Elaine May. But I did get the part, so that was the good news.
That's great.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my little crossover. I want to go back to his origins because he came up, and apparently this, again, is richly detailed in your book, which I can't wait to get into this book, Mike Nichols, A Life. He is an immigrant. It's an immigrant story, but it's not an easy transition into American life.
No, it really isn't. Mike's family fled Berlin. They were among, the last Jews to get out of Berlin, particularly his mother, who left very late. He came across when he was 7 years old with his little brother to meet his father. By then, Mike had had a bad allergic reaction to a vaccine, and so he was bald. He couldn't grow hair. So he starts out under rough circumstances, a kid who doesn't speak English, who's new to New York City, who doesn't look like other kids, who's ostracized by other children. His father dies when they're quite young. He has a stormy, difficult relationship with his mother. The family can barely make ends meet at certain points. So none of that sort of suggests that he was going to turn into the person that he became or have the career that he ended up having.
Yeah, it's just a remarkable story when you think about it that way. He had to conquer so much and overcome so much. The hair thing is interesting because I always saw him with a full head of hair, but you're saying those were hair pieces of one sort or another.
Yep, those were hair pieces, and you know, they at first when he was in college, they were very inexpensive and obvious hair pieces, and then as he got some money, he was able to make sure that he always looks good. But you know, he once said to George Siegel, the actor who was one of the stars of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, that it took him 3 hours every day to become Mike Nichols. And so I think that was a really important part of his life, the fact that he had to create a self that he felt was presentable to the world. He understood how much work that was.
You know, his films had such great characters in them. I'm thinking of Silkwood and Story. I mean, the story of Silkwood is so intense right out of the chute. In the book, when you talk about these things, I presume you take us into some of the rehearsals, some of his style as a director, as a creator. Can you speak to that for a minute?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's very much what the book is about, is how Mike did what he did, whether it was stage a play or make a movie. And one thing I try to convey to you is how much he loved working with writers and actors. I mean, Mike had a very strong vision for what a movie should be, but he was also a deeply collaborative person. He felt that the contribution of a screenwriter was extremely important. He felt that if his movies were correctly cast, that was almost half the battle for him because he knew what actors could do. And so one thing I really tried to reconstruct was how he created what he created, whether it was working with an improvisational genius like Robin Williams on The Birdcage, or working with Taylor and Burton to get them comfortable with the incredibly difficult material of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, to working with Meryl Streep, who was an actor who just incredibly excited him and reawakened his interest in making movies when they worked together for the first time on Silkwood.
Oh, wow. Mark Harris, I only have a minute left, but just tell me quickly his personal life. He was married, 3 times or something? Multiple times.
Four times.
Okay,
and
four
the
times.
last one.
And if you're going to do 3, why not 4, right, Mark?
Well, he once said, the fourth marriage is the best. And in his case, it was certainly true. He married Diane Sawyer, and they ended up having a very happy, settled life together for the last 27 or 28 years of his life.
He also battled depression, though, didn't he?
He did. That was a lifelong struggle for him, and one that I really did not know very much about until I started researching the book. Again, I think in the last years and decades of his life, that was something that had really lived, but it was something that he was quite open about struggling with at many different points, including at points when he had great success.
Mike Nichols, A Life. It's from Mark Harris. Congratulations, Mark Harris.
Thank you so much.
That was a lot crammed into a short time. I did the best I could, but really fun. Thank you.
Covered a lot of ground, so thanks.
Mark Harris.
I want to thank you for supporting Mark Thompson here on the Edge Radio. Fantastic show with all the jokes and J. Elvis, and all the commentary. I love it. You can listen to this little pageant on iTunes or Stitcher, or you can just go to the damn website, edge-show.com.
You're listening to The Edge with Mark Thompson.
I say it's exciting always. I think people don't realize that I am legitimately excited to talk to J. Elvis Weinstein when I say I'm excited. He's the original voice of Servo on Mystery Science Theater. He's a documentary filmmaker, writer, comic, director. He's done it all. He has his own podcast, too, which is called Thought Spiral, and Andy Kindler joins him for that. He's J. Elvis Weinstein.
Why, hello.
Hello. And J. Elvis, fresh-faced producer Albert, the fresh-faced young man who brings my radio show to life every day on KGO Radio throughout the Bay Area and Northern California. He joins us here as well. Hi, fresh-faced producer Albert.
Hello. It's always nice to have an audio fresh face.
Well, you know, the thing about what they've done to Albert is he was an integral part of the show from the standpoint of planning and the standpoint of including things and reaching guests and doing all these things. He screens calls, and he's doing more and more. And we have a lot of stuff going on my show. He'll do a lot of business, as you might imagine, J. Elvis.
Sure.
The Mark Thompson show has a lot of business going on. So one of the great things about Albert is that he was able to not only do all that business, but he was a contributor on the show. He was a voice. His voice sounds young, which I particularly like. But Albert, what have they done to you?
Well, it was just a lot of mumbo jumbo about me not talking on the air. It's like some complicated thing with management and the union. I'm still earning the same with or without talking on the air, but I overall think me talking is a better product. It's just another voice to your show, and hopefully they figure stuff out.
No, it definitely sucks. I couldn't agree more. I think that not having you on the air hurts the show. Now, to be fair,
it is a blow to the Thompson verse.
Yes, thank you. Very well put.
One less person to yell out for you, Mark.
The deal is that it's not as though management is evil or something. They're actually pretty cool people. They really want the best for the show, and they know that having him on the show as a voice is better. But
they just don't want to pay him the rate that they'd have to pay him to be an on-air personality.
Exactly. That's really what we're up against. And it's brutal because I'm getting all these emails and texts, and somebody even has created a hashtag. What is the hashtag, Albert?
Hashtag free Albert or something like that. From Tony in San Antonio.
We got a listener in San Antonio who sent us a picture of, I think it was him and his wife holding a card, the hashtag free Albert. Just sucks, man. I mean, you know, because you work hard to establish a camaraderie and a chemistry and a family on the air. And you know how important that is to me. And I think it's an important part of a listener experience. And then this is just really a real blow to it. So it sucks.
The only thing I find reassuring about the situation is that Albert seems to be taking it better than you.
Yes. In fact, Courtney asked me, how is Albert taking not being able to speak on the air anymore? That news, how did he take it? And I said, he's taking it much better than, with a shrug. I think he's taking it better than I am. I'm really bummed about it. So, but KGO listeners may come over here to listen to Albert speak. So, Albert, you're welcome to chime in here anytime.
Please.
Yeah.
I'll be listening.
Yeah. Usually Albert rolls and then goes to the other room.
Well, so far, let me just say, what a loss.
Yeah, Albert, you got to step your game up here. But isn't it true you usually just set us rolling, you'll get the levels, and then you go to a different studio? Am I right about that?
Sometimes I sit in and listen, like the erection guy on later today.
Oh, yeah, the erection guy.
That was the biggest takeaway for me, is that he...
Sometimes you're the DJ who puts on American Pie so we can go take a dump.
Exactly. Hey, did you see, speaking of American Pie, one night I did a deep dive with Don McLean, who wrote American Pie, performed American Pie. He's married now or involved now with this super young girl. And when I say super young, I don't mean that she's 16 or something, but I mean, I remember 20-something, and they're just jetting all over the place. It just seems the pictures of them are so odd because he's a really older man now,
Yeah, you'd think.
Yeah. He should be what? Let me see how old Don McLean is.
75 years old?
75. See, that's what Albert is here. He does that. There you go. So he's 75, and his girlfriend, let me get this, 27 years old. Don McLean's crazy, it says, for his 27-year-old girlfriend, Paris Dillon.
Yeah.
She's very pretty.
It sounds like a real name, too.
It's amazing. He looks pretty good.
Yeah, I bet you'd look pretty good, too. With Paris Dillon on your arm.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe it's just, his kids are older than she is, which is always an awkward thing. So
you can do a lot in 50 years.
She is a model, and apparently she's known for being on the reality series Catfish. She's the most wonderful person that I have ever known, he says. I think of her when I sing a lot of my songs. He was married twice before.
That's a retrofit, though. That doesn't really matter. It's not like he wrote the songs for her.
You didn't craft any new material around your love for her.
I think of my wife when I watch Mystery Science Theater, though we hadn't met yet.
I'd like to retroactively dedicate my work on Mystery Science Theater to my wife.
And God forbid we ever watch Mystery Science Theater, by the way.
You don't have it on in your house occasionally when it comes on? You don't go,
No, I have. I've watched almost none of it since I left the show 3 decades, less than Don McLean's wife's spread ago, but still 3 decades ago.
You could see yourself getting to be 75 and your wife is, you have a good marriage, so it's kind of the same.
I have a good marriage to a woman who's 10 years older than me, so.
Yeah, very, very impressive. Yeah. I think that's worthy of a little smattering of applause, yes.
I guess. I don't.
Well, because it flies in the face of what is normally done, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, normally a documentary filmmaker, comic, writer, someone who's rakishly handsome and walking into a room and commands it, like yourself, you might end up with a Paris Dillon.
Sounds like someone much needier than me, but no.
Is there an age cutoff for like, oh, he's doing well for himself, like by dating a younger woman, and like, oh, she's just mooching money off of him?
Well, there's never, I don't, what is the age spread where people don't question motives, you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
I'd say it's probably 20 years tops.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think after that you go, it just seems.
Someone's broken here. Probably both,
right.
Is what you think.
As someone who has dated younger people, I will tell you that what starts to happen is you go, I just met my girlfriend, I just met this girl, I'm really crazy about her, blah, blah, blah. And then they start to default immediately to how old is she? That's the first question they ask.
Yeah.
And that's when I thought, oh, wow, this is really, Then I have to do that. Well, she's 27, but, she serves on the board of a whatever, right. And she's really right, and she's a self-starter.
And then you start thinking, maybe my friends are the problem.
Yeah. How old are all of you people?
Right.
But I come back to the fact that they're both getting what they want out of the relationship. No, I really
we don't know if that's true, but in a best case scenario, sure. I mean, it doesn't require that we judge them.
Exactly. This is interesting news about Don McLean. I mentioned he was married twice. The marriage of the second wife came to a close with domestic violence charges leveled against him, according to this piece.
Ah.
Wow.
Great.
That's always tough. I mean, if charges were leveled, but there was no case, I always feel weird about that. And believe me, it's beyond awful if he raised his hand to his wife. But what I'm saying is, it is a good way to put a stain on somebody's reputation just by filing the charges. But they can't file the charges unless there's some evidence, right, Josh?
You can file whatever charges you want. It's like you can sue a ham sandwich.
Domestic violence charges leveled against him. Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah.
I don't know enough from the Wikipedia entry if the police were called that night. Or...
First of all, it's not Wikipedia. It's International The News. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. Secondly, that's all I have on it also.
It's hard when you hear information about someone who you don't really care about that much in the first place. It's hard to know how to file it.
I know the Don McLean thing. I didn't care either. I'm trying to remember why I got off on the whole rabbit hole of Don McLean the other night. I don't remember it.
I don't know. Was there other interesting things besides the age of his girlfriend or wife?
Nothing in that piece. That was really all about that.
I did check her Instagram, and there's 0 pictures of him, but there's a lot of pictures of her on his Instagram. So,
that's interesting. You think that
she runs his Instagram, so
yeah, he does. I'm sure doesn't even know how to work Instagram, but that's not true. 75 doesn't necessarily mean you don't know. I mean, he's still probably pretty with it.
I guess, depending on the whiskey and rye situation.
Yeah, there you go. Very, very well. Very well done. Josh hates drops.
I'm starting to feel the radio all over you.
Yeah, Josh hates drops, Albert. Can you imagine him listening to our show for 2 hours?
I go crazy.
Oh, my God. We love drops. I think the whole show is just an excuse to play drops. So he did American Pie. And what other song did he do?
American Cake? I don't know. I really don't know.
He did Starry, Starry Night, which I hadn't remembered. Okay. No, I hadn't remembered it either until this piece.
Starry, Starry Night.
Right. It was about Vincent van Gogh. It's called Vincent. It's really called Vincent, Starry, Starry Night.
Parenthetically, Starry, Starry Night.
Yes, exactly. I think the whole thing is parenthetical. I have to tell you, I never loved American Pie, although I did get into it just seemed longer than it needed to be.
Yeah, it's not a good song. Let's be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
It's got a very catchy hook.
Exactly.
But it is like the stoner poem that he's way too proud of, kind of.
Yes. J. Elvis he does a really great reducto on life. That's what I like. Yeah. Bravo.
I'm a distiller by trade.
You are a distiller. I just did that to piss off Josh.
I know. Yeah, never show a weakness to Mark.
Well, Don McLean, wish you the best. Girlfriend Paris Dillon.
Again, almost certainly her real name.
Do you have any information on her real name, Albert? Here's from the Daily Mail. Paris Dillon has been head over heels for American Pie artist Don McLean for years. She put on a busty display. She's wearing a kind of low-cut top as she stepped out with a guy who's not Don McLean at Venice Beach. Actor Paul Louis Harrell. Do you know him?
No.
Neither do I. Let me see Paul Louis Harrell, who he is.
This might be the worst rabbit hole ever.
I'm promising I'm finishing it up.
All right.
He's an American film and theater actor and character impersonator of English and German descent.
Who enjoys a busty display?
Who enjoys a busty display. It's not here on his IMDb, but yeah. All right. Well, good luck to them.
God bless them.
I saw a great documentary you might enjoy because it was high society and the effete snobbery of New York and the art world just getting hoisted. And here's what it's called: Made You Look. Have you seen it or heard about it?
I have heard of it, but I don't know much about it.
Made You Look is about a huge art fraud in New York that's perpetrated by this one woman in league with another guy who is, of course, in league with the guy who's actually painting all the paintings. And they finally catch up with the guy who's actually painting all of these various knockoffs of everything from Jackson Pollock to Mark Rothko, all these modern things. He's sort of like, those are cheap. Those aren't even good. Yeah. And his buddies go, yeah, that's it. Are you kidding? That fooled the art community. But what you realize in watching it is how everyone has an interest in the fraud being legitimized. In other words, they bring in all these people to authenticate it as a legitimate Rothko, legitimate Jackson Pollock. And the appraisers all want to have the work from the gallery. This is implicit. I mean, it's really implied, but it's so clear. You get one person after another, just, speaking to the bona fides of this thing that is absolutely a fraud. And then you have the gallery selling it. Of course, they're incentivized with more money that they'll get to claim its legitimacy. But ultimately, the whole fraud comes. And then there's a backstory as to how they came to these pieces. I really recommend it. The other thing is, the backstory is important, right? If somebody comes into your gallery and they've got this Jackson Pollock or whatever, they found this Da Vinci painting in their attic in Italy or whatever it might be. They have to have a backstory as to how they acquired it. And if the backstory isn't credible, then already the fraud starts to break down. So she had this complicated backstory that was just detailed enough that you thought, might be legit. But the other thing is, this woman comes into their gallery and she's bringing I think she brought 5 different pieces in. I mean, no one person.
Yeah. Yeah, each one undermines the whole scam. But, I mean, it seems like it's a hot potato sort of situation that as long as you get rid of it before the fraud is discovered.
Exactly. I'm going to play you the trailer, but I don't want you to be bummed out. It's short.
Okay.
But I just feel like it'll give you a feel for it, and then that'll make this content probably a little more usable, too.
An $80 million scandal has the art world up in arms tonight.
A series of fakes that sold for tens of millions of dollars.
The gallery involved in the sale of over 30 fakes.
It takes more than a really talented con man to pull off a forgery of this magnitude.
Anne Friedman was the director of Knoedler Gallery.
She had such a prominent reputation.
Knoedler is one of the oldest art galleries in the country.
Glafira Rosales brought approximately a dozen different works to Knoedler Gallery.
She comes in off the street with supposed masterpieces in the trunk of her car.
Motherwell,
Jackson Pollock,
Rothko.
All of them from this same mysterious wealthy collector, Mr. X, who was from the Philippines.
This collector was a Swiss collector. He didn't want his name to be disclosed.
Yes, it had changed from the Philippines to Switzerland.
You couldn't make this stuff up. It was incredible.
An absolutely bizarre story for any dealer to accept.
It's a business.
These works went into the greatest museums in the world.
But there was a point where questions were coming up.
The analysts found that a yellow paint used in the Pollock hadn't been available until 1970. Jackson Pollock died in a car crash in 1956.
Either the paintings are all real or they're all fake.
We all know how that story turned out.
The paintings looked really, really good.
They fooled a lot of people.
The real is on the right. It's not easy.
The one on the right is real.
What surprised you about this case?
It surprised me that the paintings were being made in Queens by a math professor.
These fakes were painted by an unknown Chinese artist in the garage of his home.
I mean, it was just shocking.
Rosales' boyfriend, Juan Carlos Bergantinos, worked with the painter to create the forgeries.
He ran away, left her holding the bag, and he took almost all the money.
Who else should be in jail for this?
Yo sé que...
No.
Oh, okay. He doesn't like that question.
We're talking here about $80.7 million worth of fake paintings.
I was fooled. I believe the paintings were absolutely real.
She knew exactly what she was doing.
I didn't know that this would drastically affect these people's lives.
Who was involved?
What's the whole story?
How could you devise such a scheme?
That was, as it turned out, just the beginning of the story.
I mean, it's intriguing, isn't it? It's called Made You Look.
It is, but as a filmmaker, I started to get critical of the actual trailer. So,
interesting.
I got off track. Yes.
What are your critiques of the trailer?
It repeats the same beat too many times.
It's funny, and you know this, but I don't know how many listeners do. The trailer is done by a completely different group of people than do the movie.
That's true in big time movies. But I did my own trailers for both my.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm used to big time situations.
Yeah.
But and honestly, as a filmmaker, I'm not suggesting that you wouldn't want to have input into the trailer. I mean, it's critical in a sense. You're telling the audience the story of my movie. Let me at least see the story that you're representing to the audience, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're doing a big studio movie, it is truly out of your hands if you're not a powerful director. But, I think, on one of my films, I had an editor make a trailer, and it was completely different from the one I would have made.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. When you have him do that, do you give him notes like this is what I want, or you just say, go ahead and make the trailer?
In that case, it was probably 3 or 4 drafts that we went back and forth on. But it was also right when I finished the movie, and then it was, there was a time span between that and when the movie actually got released because of all the music rights. And so my attitude sort of changed a lot over that time.
Right. It's interesting because I've read for a lot of trailers and done a few. Sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say you see that they're so critical, and they really even contain often scenes that don't show up in the movie, or I shouldn't say often, from time to time.
Yeah, they do, and that always bothered me as a kid, especially. But as a filmmaker, I think your tendency is to try to protect the movie when you're making a trailer, so you don't blow it all in the trailer. But the truth is, you should blow it all in the trailer.
No, it's true. It's true. It's like in presentations where you're building to, I'm going to save my best thing for the end of my presentation. Nope. Give them your best thing in the first minute or whatever it is, and then give them your second best thing at the end, right?
Right. I think that's a good policy.
I mean, especially now, I just think the attention span is, really has been blasted away. But that's interesting. Plus, you're only hearing the trailer, so it might have worked better if you'd seen it. But anyway,
I'm sure it did. I was just telling you where my head was at by the end.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. Tuned out after 90 seconds, Mark. Thank you. But you should check it out. It's called Made You Look.
I will.
Yeah. What have you been working on?
I'm working on TV projects. I'm pitching a show to various people who you pitch shows to right now, and looking for TV stuff again.
Do you want me to do a trailer for you?
Please.
I could do a voiceover. That's all I can do. Do you go in when you're doing a comedy project? Do you go in with, like in reality TV, we had to go in with sizzle and casting, potential casting reels, this kind of thing. You don't need that in comedy. How do you pitch it?
You pitch the show more than the cast, but it's good to have an example at the ready for each part, kind of,
Right.
And it just depends. I mean, every situation is different. Sometimes you're starting with a star,
Sure, that's a totally different thing, I would think. That kind of attachment can, change the fortunes immediately.
Right.
I pitched a series that got picked up for pilot by Comedy Central. Got picked up. I'm sorry, let me be clear about this. Got picked. Not that it matters, but I don't want to overstate what happened. But we went in, and they only greenlight for script a very small number of shows, and we were one of them. And it took so long to work out the business affairs arrangements that I lost the showrunner that I wanted. Then they give you a list of showrunners that they're comfortable with, that work with the network or whatever,
Right.
if you don't go in with one already. And the top 5 were all gone because it had taken so long, okay? So now you're with these other people, and you end up, this is a critical thing, I guess maybe I'm just reflecting out loud, you end up doing what you think the network wants. That is to say, getting somebody on board who you think the network likes, and
Right.
that'll be good for the project. And he was awful, just awful. And then my partner on the project rewrote it. And what happened was the showrunner, designated sort of showrunner or co-showrunner with my partner, they get into it, and then it becomes the politics of the agent calling the network and says, how can you have this other guy rewrite my client's script? And then the network calls me, and they go, what's going on there? They rewrote the script, and then and then it was just, it was a meltdown. So
Yeah, it sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah, it was really awful, sad, but
It's just with every project, the amount of things that have to line up for it to go right is sort of an astronomical figure.
that does make me feel better. I mean, it really does. Well, Josh, I love talking to you. I love that we're, back with it. It's a very, the radio show has taken a lot of energy from me, you know what I mean? But now maybe with Albert back involved on the podcast here a little bit, we'll try to ramp up a few more episodes, more frequently.
Look at the life he injected today.
Albert, have you left the building?
Yeah, I'm still here.
You're an intimidating figure, Josh. You might be intimidated a bit by you. That'll pass, but now.
Let me just say, I hope not.
Problem is, I get recommended all the films and documentaries from Mark, and I just never watch any of them.
I know, it's unbelievable. I recommended most recently the Bernardo Bertolucci movie, The Last Emperor. Did you see that, Josh?
I did, yes.
It won the Academy Award. No, why? You didn't like it?
No, I did. I liked it. It was, it was 30 years ago, but yeah.
Right, exactly. But I just saw it. It was served to me on HBO Max, and I thought, oh, that was a great movie. Let me go watch it. And I watched it again. It's still a great movie.
The real thing is, no one really wants a recommendation for something to watch these days.
Oh, I see. There's just so much out there, and you're backed up on everything.
Everyone's walking around with this burden.
Yeah, you're right.
Of their personal queue.
That's a great point. I recommended Midnight Express. I was trying to recommend older movies that I thought he'd like.
Yeah. I do Midnight Run before I do Midnight Express.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Let me add that to the list.
I'll add it to my list also of movies I'll try to get to.
Midnight Run. You know what was so great about Midnight Run was the reality of it. They really played the real. Don't you think, Josh?
Well, I mean, it wasn't really very realistic, but they didn't play everything huge, at least.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They didn't play anything. It wasn't a broad comedy. But yeah, I guess it wasn't very realistic.
It was small comedy and a broad story.
I get it.
Like The In-Laws.
The In-Laws is brilliant. Why the fuck would they remake The In-Laws?
I don't know.
And have one of my heroes, Albert Brooks, be party to it.
I know.
I got to think that was a check.
Well, of course it was a check.
No, I'm just saying it wasn't like, hey, you know what, we're going to redo this and we're going to make it our own and make it really special. I don't think Albert Brooks said that.
No, I agree with you. I think Albert Brooks, if you hire him as an actor, comes to your project with a whole different mindset than he does if he's written or directed it.
That's a great point. Anything to mention, Josh? You have your own podcast with Andy Kindler called...
I do. It's called Thought Spiral. We just had our 200th episode today.
Congratulations. We have a great episode ahead. This is only the beginning that you're hearing with Josh. We have the inventor and medical doctor who's changed a lot of lives, but then had his own life changed by a bizarre chance encounter.
Yeah, that interview went a whole different way than I thought it might.
So that's coming up in just a couple of minutes here on this big podcast. Josh, I adore you, and I'm glad that you still make time for us, so thank you.
Likewise, my friend.
And Albert, nice to have you speaking a little bit on this show. Maybe a little bit is just the right amount. J. Elvis Weinstein, everybody.
Again, nice one, Albert. Like a pistol, that one.
Love it. Please Please welcome my occasional sidekick. I call him a contributor. I also call him one of the most valuable human beings who draws breath. He's J. Elvis Weinstein. Come on.
Wow, I can live up to contributor, but not the other.
Director, comic. How's the movie doing? The latest one to at least be available to the public is Michael Desbarres, right?
That's correct. I believe it's delighting tens and tens of people across the world.
And it's called Michael Desbarres. What is it again?
Michael Desbarres, Who Do You Want Me to Be?
I knew that, but I just like to do that.
I know. It's your gag.
You know, am I not allowed one gag?
It's your way of belittling my work. Who doesn't love that?
Well, you've seen right through my subterfuge. A special guest today is someone who I've known for decades. He is an inventor. He is a doctor. And when we talk about inventions, one of his inventions was an innovative bicycle seat that was and is used by cyclists around the world. He's made a fortune off of it. Not that it's important. I'm sure he would do it for no money. But these are revolutionary concepts that he comes up with. He's Dr. Roger Minkow. Hello, sir.
Hello. Thanks for having me, Mark.
Hey, the bicycle seat, just because I mentioned it, what was happening? People were getting ED or some kind of problems because they were sitting on the seat that was really hard. And I know you came up with some innovative design.
Yeah, this is like 25 years ago. So 25 years ago, there was an article in the main U.S. magazine, Bicycling Magazine, and it talked about erectile dysfunction for male cyclists. And I was traveling around the United States, going from airport to airport and setting up back clinics at the time. And I read the article, and I went home, and I looked up the anatomy and came up with a theoretical idea of how to fix it. So I built a prototype seat, and I sent it to the guy that wrote the article for Bicycling Magazine. And about, 2 weeks later, I got a call from the owner of Specialized Bicycles, Mike Sinyard, and he said, look, I just talked to my friend who's an editor at Bicycling, and he said, you've got something that may be important. And so I went down to Specialized, and we created the first ergonomic bicycle seat that would deal with this problem. It took about a year to make the seat, and when we first sent it out, it looked a little bit strange to people that were in cycling, and they sent it back, and they were pretty negative. And I had talked to Mike, and I said, Mike, I think we're right. We just got to keep going. And he agreed, and it became the biggest selling bicycle product in the world in 1998. It basically changed the way people thought about cycling. Before that, the cyclists were kind of quiet about this problem that they knew existed. But after the article came out and the seat came out, it brought everything out into the open, and people all around the world responded very positively.
Yeah, I mean, it did, as you say, it revolutionized things. And J. Elvis Weinstein is with us, documentary filmmaker, comic, writer.
I'm just sitting here trying not to make taint jokes, honestly.
Is that how you got famous as a filmmaker?
Yes, it's all of my perennium material is gold.
Josh, there's a movie here, isn't there? Because the guy was rejected by the cycling community initially because it looks so weird and everything, but then what happens? They realize, in Act 2 of your film, they realize that Dr. Minkow's innovation is actually going to revolutionize their world. And
right, that's when we do hit him with the cyclist erection montage.
Yes.
Well, at least we're writing now is the point. I mean, some modifications may be required.
Yeah, I'm just blue skying here.
Exactly.
Actually, interesting. One of my neighbor's sons became a producer in Hollywood, and his very first movie that he made was about 4 or 5 people that invented things, among which was the story of the bicycle seat and me. And this was like 25 years ago, and he made this into a documentary film at that point.
It's been done, Josh. That's the point.
Maybe we're dead in the water.
Yeah, you might have to put your montage to rest.
Yeah, that's tough.
I bet I can find another use for that montage.
You know, you mentioned the orthopedic thing with the back. I met you because I was having awful back pain, but I mean, really like debilitating back pain. And I guess I mentioned it on television.
Mark, yours is the worst. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, actually, your story, Mark, and with your back pain was pretty much like the story with the bicycle seat. You went on the air on the news, and you said, I have terrible back pain. And I called you up and brought down an ergonomic chair that I had designed, similar to me sending the saddle to the editor of Bicycling Magazine.
That's exactly right. In fact, you brought it down I think my memory is that you literally unloaded it from a van or from a whatever car and set it up on the street in front of the station, and I sat in that chair there on the street, and it was absolutely transcendentally changing my back pain. It literally was the first time I had been seated in a chair and didn't have any pain. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, well, people I've had a lot of back problems too. People that have back problems, they know instantly whether something works or it doesn't work. People that never had back problems, they can sit on a bench and it makes no difference. But for those of us that have suffered with this, we can tell the difference between one chair and another in an instant.
Can I ask you something off the topic?
Yeah.
What do you think about disc replacement surgery? That's my next step. It's looking like.
You know, I got out of this a long time ago before the replacement discs were really popular. So at the time that I was there, we didn't have that option. But disc replacement surgery looks to be more logical than what they did in the past, which was to fuse vertebrae and take the movement out of the back. Now they're simulating the normal movement, which is much more intelligent and much. I think it's going to be really good. Josh, which level are you talking about? Low back?
Low back, L5S1.
Right, and that's a common thing, and that's what I had as well. And that's what Mark had, too, pretty much.
Yeah. So let me understand this, just because there are probably people out there who also suffer from back pain or might be considering what to do. This always, I suppose, is the last resort, surgery. But you're saying, I remember for me it was they can take out the disc. It's a discectomy. There's a laminectomy where they take away the bone around it that's like rubbing on the nerve. That's what I had, a double laminectomy. Yeah, top that, Josh. I had a double laminectomy. Okay?
No, I had that surgery, and it wasn't effective for me. That's why I have to.
But now what are they suggesting? You're saying they literally replaced the disc?
Yeah, they have artificial discs now, but I'm not really an expert on that, so it's probably not logical for me to say too much. But I do think in medicine, the most important thing is that you find a surgeon that you can trust and that has done these kind of surgeries and is very, very well aware of what he's doing. When we talk, Mark, about the cancer that I had, that brought into play the fact that surgeons are trained differently. And so if you're in a small outlying area, your surgeon may not be able to do all of the spectrum of surgeries that somebody in the university can do.
My guy is a mucky muck at Cedars, so I do.
Right. So that's fine. I live in a small town in Petaluma. And here we've got, a small kind of a medical community, and these guys are good, but they're not trained like the guys at Cedar or the guys at Stanford or UC.
It sounds like Josh has got, top guys working on it.
Although he's 0-1 right now on my back. So.
Right. Okay.
But you're going with the same guy? You're dancing with the date that brung you?
I think so. He did warn me that we're taking the conservative approach and hoping it works first. So he did cover his bases.
Give me one more shot, Josh. I think I've got this. Just give me one more shot.
I've had several spinal operations, and I had a fusion in my neck. And then 2 years ago, I blew out a disc above the fusion. And I had shoulder symptoms that were very severe. And I went to one of my friends who's a great spine surgeon at UCSF in San Francisco. And he said to me, look, you had a big fusion before. You blew out the disc on the top. We can either extend the fusion, which would be a very large operation, or he said, I think I can make this thing better by doing a very small laminectomy and just carving out a little bit of bone in the right place. So he told me that, and he left the room, and his chief resident came in, and of course this guy was brilliant as well, but very, very little experience because he was still a resident, and he said, well, you obviously need the big operation. Nothing else is going to work. So I talked to my friend Sig, and I said, Sig, let's do the small operation. And he did, and I went into the hospital that morning at 7 o'clock. I was out by 4. I went home. I never took one pain pill, and I never had any symptoms after that.
Wow.
So he gambled that he could do a very small, very focused operation, and that would solve my problem. And he was right. And so the difference between a brilliant, newly trained spine surgeon and somebody who's been around long enough to know what works and what doesn't is that the older guy sometimes can say, we could do a big thing, but I think I can pinpoint this and make it work.
Right.
That same thing happened to me with my other medical problem, which we can talk about.
I had the reverse of that happen when I had kidney cancer, though. I had an older guy going, don't worry about it. Come back in 6 months. There's stuff that grows on kidneys all the time. And then I went to the other guy. I went, nope, it's got to come out. The whole thing, because it's near the blood vessel. So
yeah, there's no one way to do this. That's why it's so important that you have a good medical team and you trust them and you can communicate with them.
Well, Josh, what's the timing on your surgery? When is it?
It's pending.
Okay.
I haven't set it up. I just know it's the next thing.
Are you going to work it around your podcast appearance schedule?
I can only hope so.
Okay. All
yeah,
right.
I mean,
we can mic up the surgeon if you want.
Yeah, I'd like to maybe make him part of whatever planning for the future there might be.
During the operation. Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking.
That's how good Josh is, Dr. Roger Minkow. He's that good. So, Roger, I want to get to your most recent invention. But before I do, you mentioned something that is really intriguing. You told me a story, and I wonder if you could just share it with the audience. You also, and Josh referenced his cancer. They had to remove a kidney, and it was sort of found suddenly, like they weren't even looking for the cancer. It showed up on a photograph, right? I mean, for lack of a better description of, what do they call it?
Yeah.
I had a colon issue, and my kidney photobombed the CT scan.
Yeah.
The way they discovered your cancer, Roger, has all sorts of bizarre angles to it. Can you take us through some of that?
Yeah, I guess we'll start with something that happened to me 5 years ago. One of my friends who was diagnosed and dying from colon cancer was giving a lecture in Svalbard, which is an archipelago between the northern tip of Norway and the North Pole. And he called me up and he said, you want to spend a couple of days together and hang out? I'm going to give this lecture. So I said, sure. So I went there and we hung out in this fantastic place that has been written up many times. But on the way back to Oslo, we had a transfer in the airport at Tromsø. And I was standing there in line waiting to go through. And I looked behind me and there was this gorgeous Norwegian girl. And I made some comment about her jacket. And this is, maybe a 15-second conversation. And she said to me, I need to get your contact information.
Wow. What was the comment about the jacket?
I said, nice colors, blah, blah, blah. And she said, thank you. We need some colors to liven things up around here because it's so dark and so gray. But then she said, I need to know how to get a hold of you.
Stop for a second. They must be starved for compliments in Norway, right? She wants to stay in touch with the guy.
I see. I already went to what symptom is he showing? So let's let it continue.
Right.
Anyway, go ahead, Roger. Sorry.
All right. So I gave her my information. I got her information. And then Heidi and I, my wife and I, were going to go to Oslo 2 months later. I wrote to her, called her or something, and I said, why don't you come down to Oslo and stay with us for a couple of days? We have an apartment there that we're renting. And she said, okay. And this is like after knowing her for 30 seconds. Wow. And she came down and we spent the weekend with her. And I have literally spoken to her every week for the last 5 years.
This is amazing. Excuse me, Roger. Josh, this is already an amazing story, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, I'll tell you, can I just, first of all, that you could be happily married, which he is, to Heidi, and that she would be cool with you having just struck up this conversation with this woman, then that you invite her to spend time with you when you go over there to Norway again.
Right.
It's already sort of soft core porn already.
Yeah, it's feeling like you're swingers. You're not swingers per se, right? I mean, this isn't like a sex thing.
No, we are very conservative like that. Okay, right. So I went back to Svalbard 2 more times, once by myself and once with Heidi, and we stayed with Victoria. So 3 years ago, I got a telephone call after a colonoscopy, and I had colonoscopies every year because I had polyps. And I got a call from my surgeon, my local surgeon in Petaluma, and he said, you've got a problem. You've got rectal cancer. And we need to do a low anterior resection, which means that we have to take your rectum out, all of the bottom intestines out. You have to have a colostomy. And I don't know that I can get you ever put back together because you've already had surgery for diverticulitis where we took out a foot of your colon before, and I'm not sure how it's going to work. Okay, so I talked to Victoria, and Victoria said, I have a friend. Let me call him. His name is Henry, and he's 84 years old, and he is a healer in Norway. He's a friend of my family's, and he's quite well known. And I said, Victoria, I am due now to go to Stanford and have surgery. So she said, all right, I'll call Henry. So she called Henry, and she said, Henry, I have a friend in the U.S. who has colon cancer. She made a mistake. She said, he has colon cancer and he's going to be operated on. Can you help him? And Henry said, well, give me his birth date. And she did. And Henry said to Victoria, he said, he does not have colon cancer. He has rectal cancer.
Wait a minute. Her friend, she called, her friend Henry. He's a doctor, or he's a psychic, or he's a medium? What is he?
He's a shaman.
In all of our cultures, we have healers. We don't talk about it so much in our culture in the United States, but they exist. And in Norway, Henry is a healer.
Okay.
Now, God knows how he does it, but he's done it all his life. And
in Sweden, he's a private eye.
Yeah, well, Henry is renowned in Norway for doing this, and I have now experienced other people that know Henry. But anyway, so Henry said he has rectal cancer. He does not have colon cancer. He will go to Stanford, and when they operate on him, they will find nothing.
Wow.
Okay, so March 16th, 3 years ago, I went to Stanford to have a focused procedure called a TEMS procedure, which was not the big anterior resection that my guy here in Petaluma was trying to get me to do. It was a smaller procedure. It's only done in 5 centers in the United States. And there was a woman, Natalie Carroll Cook, who was the surgeon. She was fantastic. So Natalie said, look, she said, with your lab reports and with everything that we know, I would have the big operation. And I said, Natalie, I refuse. I won't have it. So you either do the small operation or we don't do anything. And she said, okay, I'll do the small operation. Now, when I had the polyp removed that showed the cancer, it showed that the cancer was all the way out to the edges of the margin of what they cut out, which was a polyp in the rectum. So logically speaking, you would say, well, if they go into the rectum now, they've got to find cancer on the edges because the cancer was already grown out to the edges on the polyp that they removed. But when Natalie went in there and she took this whole thing out, there was not one sign of cancer.
That's bizarre, isn't it?
I mean, to me, that says they happened to get it all when they went in there.
Yeah, but we're talking about microscopic margins.
Right.
So on the polyp that they took out, microscopically, that cancer was growing out to the edges.
Gotcha.
So it's like, could they have been that lucky to do a 360-degree cut and absolutely within microscopic tolerance get all of the cancer? Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense.
So, what do you conclude based on that?
All right, well, wait. There's more to this story. So we went to Norway to meet Henry, but Henry was in the hospital. We couldn't meet him. But we went to a place called Reno, which is where Victoria, her family, has some cabins. And we met her grandmother. And her grandmother said, I know Henry, and I've had 3 experiences with Henry. Each time the person had a very severe illness, and they went into the hospital, and each time they couldn't find anything.
Again, that's so exactly. Josh wants to reach Henry. But for a moment, so are you suggesting, or is the suggestion out there then that Henry is, through some sort of energy that he's able to marshal, that he is affecting the state of these patients, and in your case, he affected the state of the cancer in your body?
I think he did. And I mean, you know me, Mark. I mean, I've been a scientist all my life. I've been a doctor. I'm published in the medical literature. I don't believe in, lightweight theories, but I do believe that there are things out there that we don't understand, things bigger than what we could understand. And I think when I look back at what happened to me 3 years ago, I can tell you that when I was in the hospital and I was getting ready for the surgery, I felt something strange. And I would not be surprised if somehow Henry could affect medical conditions.
Even though he doesn't know you, he hadn't met you at that point?
And that's the way he was with almost everybody that he had helped in the past. He only had to get into their birth date to be able to focus on them.
Which just seems so out there. Like, I mean, there are a lot of people born on that day, you know?
Right, but he knew when he got my birthday, he knew something about me that Victoria didn't know. He knew what type of cancer I had before she even knew.
That's just an extraordinary turn on that tale. It really is.
I want to go back. I want to go back to the very beginning of this story now because it went differently than I thought it was going to go. obviously. So do you believe that Victoria's instant connection to you in that airport line was guided by Henry?
I believe that her need to have my information was part of something that was going to evolve 2 years later.
Okay.
Wow, that's super eerie.
Yes. But I mean, look, I have known for most of my life that I am an empath. And there are many people that are empaths that have some kind of degree of sensitivity that normal people maybe don't have. And Henry might have been just a very extreme form of that type of ability. Do you guys know what empaths are?
Yes.
What are they?
All right, so I'll tell you how I found out about empaths. So I was sitting on a boat taking pictures of the Blue Angels during an air show in San Francisco, and I was unable to get the picture because the plane would come over so fast that by the time I heard it, it was gone. A guy stood up in the boat, and he came over to me, and he said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Sure, man, I'm not doing anything good here." He said, "Okay, well, look," he said, "in 15 seconds, there's going to be 3 airplanes coming from your right side, and the middle one's going to be upside down. Get ready and take the picture." And so I point, and boom, they came. And he did this for an hour or whatever the air show was, and he told me every sequence that was going to happen. And I said, "How in the world do you know what's going to happen?" And he said, "Well, I memorized the flight schedule or whatever." And I said, "No, I'm sorry, but that's impossible. I'm a pilot, and there's no way that any of us could memorize this flight pattern." And then he said, "Look," he said, "I'm an empath." And he said, "I'm sitting next to you because you're an empath." He said, "I can see what's going to happen before it happens." And that's what I'm telling you.
You know,
it was the first time.
I always just thought that empaths were hyper empathic people, like who were close to emotion and whose the tendency was to speak with people and share their emotion. That was always the way I'd understood it. But you're suggesting that it exists on another plane almost as well.
Yeah, what you're saying is true. And there's a spectrum of sensitivity. And maybe at the bottom, and that's more or less what you're describing is more or less me. So, for example, if I'm giving a lecture, I can feel what the audience feels when they look at me.
I'm a comic, and I
right?
can too.
Yeah, and you can't. No, that's probably true. Is that you're being serious though, aren't you?
I am actually. I mean, I was being both, but yeah, you know, it's pretty. As a comic, those feelings come pretty starkly.
But I mean, I think that performers must have some of this ability.
Well, I think more to the point, comedians and comedy writers have a frequency they're tuned into that the general public isn't, probably. The ability to see things with two sets of eyes.
Yeah, it's like I'm an inventor, and I come up with ideas, but the ideas that I come up with are because I see what other people want. Like on the bicycle seat, I could see that there was a need for that, and like on my new product, there is a need, and I can feel it. And so even though people say, "Look, we've never seen anything like this, we don't think it's proper, we don't think it's going to go," I say, "Wait, you're wrong. Hang in there. Something's going to happen." And something does happen.
Well, I would suggest that you could almost, assign that to stick-to-itiveness or, a goal-oriented, not taking no for an answer. There are a lot of things that are associated with ambition not being blunted by being told you can't do it, it's not going to work, it's not working right now, how come it's not working faster, or whatever. I mean, those people with vision like yourself, you could see how you might be able to triumph in those situations without empathy or without any kind of notion as to what the future holds, just your basic dogged determination.
Right, but the initial idea of, wait, I think this is needed in the world, that's a little bit different. So most people, they can't think like that. Most people think, wait, if there's something needed, there's got to be some son of a bitch who's way smarter than me that already figured it out.
Right.
Yeah, I would argue that inspiration is common to art, though, too, that spark can turn into a song or a painting or any number of things.
Totally. I agree.
So at the end of your experience, have you met him?
No,
Henry?
I have never met Henry. because we went there specifically to meet him, and by then he was 85, and he was hospitalized for some kind of medical problem, and we have not been back since. So no, I have not met him. Victoria continues to be in contact with him frequently, but I have not.
I have to say, Henry being in the hospital is a hole in the story.
Well, he's not a superhuman.
But, maybe I was never meant to really meet him.
Maybe not.
No.
And maybe he was in the hospital and it prevented, maybe there was something, I don't know. There's a whole bunch of this stuff of course, that I have no idea about. All I know, and I've got to say, to the credit of my surgeon at Stanford, she said, please tell me what happens when you meet Henry. I want to know.
Wow.
She was totally open.
It is cool when you hear that sort of, Western medical surgeons and others are open to that world that you just described.
I bet if it was a male surgeon, it would have been a whole different ballgame.
I bet it would have been. I think that women surgeons, I prefer going to women surgeons now because I think that they're more sensitive. They don't have power trips going on. They're not trying to show you how great they are. I mean, I just have had much better experience right now in the last couple of years with women surgeons than I have with men.
Yeah, I mean, the male surgical ego is a tough thing to get around sometimes.
Very. And I mean, I spent years working with spine surgeons and doing outcome research with spine surgeons. And those guys, it's hard for them to come down to a human level, given what they have to do every day and the chances and the risks and the responsibility that they have. It's very hard for them to be compassionate. Whereas I think women somehow seem to be able to bridge that a little bit better.
Well, I'm sure some patients will happily trade compassion for confidence in their surgeon too. But
here's an interesting thing. It's like, people say, I go to this guy. He's got a terrible personality, but he's great with his hands.
Right.
And I say, well, what happens if you have a complication? What happens if you actually have to deal with this guy and it's not just an operation that's successful? How do you talk to him? How do you go through a rehab? How do you go through horrible,
I'm with you
whatever.
completely.
Do these, for lack of a better expression, do these healers exist in sufficient numbers that like somebody like Josh who's got a spine surgery coming up can call, 1-800-HEALER or anything? I mean, in other words, or is it really the universe just has to favor you with this chance meeting of the sort that you had?
I don't know, but there was a TV show called The Healer. And it was filmed in Australia. And it was about a young man who was a healer. And they videotaped this guy going to see different people and helping them. And one of the people that he helped was Jennifer Grey.
Yeah,
so Jennifer Grey,
he did her nose job. Okay,
about the time that they filmed Dirty Dancing, she was in an automobile accident and had a significant neck injury, and she had chronic pain. And this guy went to see her and basically helped her, just like he helped everybody else. But that TV show called The Healer, it was from Australia, shows the same type of person as Henry that would go around and he would deal with people like that.
Well, your real life experience is extraordinary. So what's happened since then?
As far as what?
As far as your life's concerned.
Well, so my rectal cancer was gone. It's gone. It's never come back, and that's been fantastic. I have other medical problems that I have dealt with last year, and that everything seems to be under control right now.
I mean, you've had this amazing thing, because when I knew you, you were in good health, much younger guy, obviously, when I, was seeing you all the time, and you subsequently sort of have been running this steeplechase of health issues. I think you had a heart thing too, but you've now kind of reached a cruising altitude, I guess.
I've had 14 surgeries.
Top that, Josh.
I can't do it.
And none of them were elective. So these were, last year I had 2 cardiac operations, 2 stents, and a heart attack. But that seems to be pretty good right now. And
I'd move in with Henry if I had that, wouldn't you, Josh? I mean, you've got to keep Henry close, really. Much closer. But those were all things that surgery was well applied to, meaning those were tried and true operations. I mean, I understand it's the heart. Right. It's tricky, but you knew what you were getting.
Right. I mean, when you're having angina and you've got collapsed grafts from a prior bypass, you know what's going on, and there is only one way to deal with it. So, it's not like you can elect not to fix it. But, it's funny because I've learned more about medicine after I retired and got out of medicine. Being a patient, I've learned much more about medicine and patients than I ever knew before.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and I think we all learn more about medicine. You talk about men and women. I mean, women are really locked out of medicine for years. The culture of medicine definitely does not favor women, at least historically. And as it turns out, maybe they're better at it, for a lack of a better way to put it.
Well, and certainly in other countries and other cultures, women have been much more prominent. I mean, I think in Russia there was always more than 50% women physicians. So, yeah. Things are changing, and they're changing in the right way, I hope. And I think our medical care is in crisis right now in the United States. I'm not happy with what we have to do to get healed, and the pricing is absolutely ridiculous. So, I mean, insurance covers it, but how many people look beyond their insurance? For example, my hobby now is I fly a radio-controlled aircraft, and sometimes I get injured. I got injured about 2 months ago, and I chopped my finger with a propeller. And I went into the emergency room, and I got 5 stitches. And no tetanus shot. I didn't need one. I just got 5 stitches. That was it. The bill came back, and what they charged was $5,500. Now, wow. Our insurance paid everything but $100 or $150. But that bill for $5,500 for 5 stitches is absolutely ridiculous.
When you feel bad for an insurance company getting screwed, the system is off.
Right. I mean, some of my surgeries have been $500,000.
And it's exactly that relationship to which you refer, Josh, with the insurance company that keeps the prices high, because they know that those big insurers will write those checks. But if you don't have insurance or adequate insurance or the kind of premium insurance that will take care of big charges like that, you get screwed, and it can just drive you to bankruptcy or worse. I mean, people have committed suicide because of these medical bills.
Yeah, easily. There's something not right. I mean, if you have an MRI scan and an insurance company is going to pay for it, it might be 10 times the price of what you could get it for if you paid cash.
Exactly. And when they were forging Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act, once I knew the insurance companies were involved, they had the prominent place at the table in helping to shape it. You knew it was not going to fundamentally change the cost of medical care. I understand it got pre-existing conditions. I'm not saying it wasn't without virtues, but the reality is that as long as these insurance companies are involved in the process, and they will be because they have so much money to buy politicians, I just don't see how you make any real reforms when it comes to health care in America.
Right. I mean, and I did practice medicine in the Arctic in Norway under a socialized system. This is when I was just finishing medical school. I went over there, and I got to say it was wonderful. They paid a minuscule amount for anything. The money for healthcare came out of their taxes, just like education. And so nobody ever worried that they were not going to be able to afford either education or healthcare. It was amazing. And our fee schedule was incredible. So, for example, I was up in a city called Hammerfest, which is the northernmost city in the world, way above the Arctic Circle. And when I went on house calls, which I did every third night or something like that, I would bill the insurance or the national insurance company, and I would get paid. And I got paid differently if, for example, I took a car and I went to see a patient. It was one fee. If I hiked to see a patient, it was another fee. If I took a boat, it was something different. The guy that I worked with carried a patient back on his back from the patient's house to his boat, and he could charge differently for the amount of time he carried that patient. I mean, it was amazing. And everybody seemed to get the care that they needed.
My doctor has never even, ever offered to carry me to my boat.
I know.
I know. You should ask.
But I hear what you're saying. This ossified, awful healthcare system is just seems intractable. But I'm hoping that maybe there are ways to chip away at it. I don't know. Before we wrap up, I want to ask you about your latest invention. So your life, Roger, got back to you being able to enjoy other activities, including chopping your fingers off with radio-controlled planes, but also your world, which is to identify sort of breakthrough innovations. It brought you to another innovation, another invention. It's a very cool thing you came up with.
The propeller thimble.
The propeller thimble. When I was dealing with the bicycle industry, I was traveling around the world all the time. So I traveled somewhere around 1.5 million miles. And much of that was in coach. And so when I was traveling in coach, this is like 4 years ago, I was looking around at everybody with their heads twisted, trying to sleep, uncomfortable. And I looked at these horseshoe cushions that everybody was using, and I thought these cushions are designed improperly, and these people are not in a position that's going to even be comfortable enough for them to sleep. So I designed something, and I can't say everything about it now because we're still in the midst of finishing it, but it is a cushion. Actually, it's a sleep support, and it doesn't go around the back and the sides. This supports you differently, and it lets you sit in coach, reclined 10 to 15 degrees like the seats do, and it lets your head have support so that it's not flopping around. I mean, we've all seen people with their arms crossed sitting on that stupid little table in front of them trying to support their heads. And people are looking for some way to get some rest. Okay, so now we have COVID, nobody's traveling, but we all have flight credits, and somewhere when we all get vaccinated, travel will open up again. And when it does, we will have a product that allows somebody to sleep comfortably sitting up.
I mean, it's a real problem because the other thing that happens is, in addition to not being able to get to sleep, you doze off for a second, you have all kinds of neck issues as a result that makes a flight of almost any length really, really tough if you're at all tired. You show up to wherever you're going, you're exhausted, your neck hurts. It's just awful.
How high is the looking silly factor with your?
It doesn't look silly at all, actually,
yeah.
And so that's a big difference because you've seen these things where you wrap yourself around it, you look like a fool. I mean, nobody's going to want that. No, the thing that I have is almost invisible. It's small, and it comes with an integrated face mask for protection against viruses. Imagine getting on a plane to Sydney, Australia, and they say your flight time is 15 and a half hours. Good luck.
That's the thing.
Yeah. If you can't sleep for 15 and a half hours on the way to Sydney, your vacation is going to start off on a real hard direction.
I'm excited for you. I mean, you've done really well. The ones that you have come up with in the past have been innovative to the point of revolutionary. I mean, you did revolutionize the bicycle seat. There's no question about it. My pals who are cyclists, that's their big thing. I look at their seats and go, I know the guy who came up with that whole seat design. So when you identify something like this, it's an exciting revelation. So I'm congratulating you, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I mean, I have an idea like this like every 10 years. It doesn't come all the time.
Sounds like all you'd need, really.
That's all you would need. Yeah, if it works, that's all you would need. But this one feels right. It feels right. And everybody you see, if you ask anybody if they're flying and they have one of those cushions, those horseshoe cushions, you go, does this work? And absolutely everybody says no. And they keep buying them. I have a friend that said, I know they don't work, and my wife buys another one every time we fly.
Yeah, I get it.
Because people are desperate.
You're right. You're desperate for anything. Maybe it'll work on this flight type thing. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, anything to relieve the discomfort of the flight.
Josh, could there be a movie in this? This probably hasn't been done yet. Maybe you want to stay in touch.
Let's see how it catches on. I can already see the head bobbing to still head montage now. I'm always thinking of
okay, he's thinking about montages, so that's good.
Yeah.
So those of us that actually have neck problems with herniated discs, if you sit in one of those coach seats and your head flops around, you're going to wake up with perhaps neuropathy in your hands and all sorts of discomfort in your neck. So keeping a neutral spine position is absolutely essential. And the stuff that's out there now does not do that.
I believe that you tried, maybe you were successful in getting the seat design on aircraft to change. I know you were talking to them for a long time.
Yes,
what happened with that?
I designed the pilot seats for the United 767 fleet, all of the pilot seats. And I designed the passenger seats as well, but they rejected my idea because it would have taken out 1 inch of the length of the bottom cushion. And they felt like they didn't want to eliminate any rows, and they couldn't go in that direction. But they did do it for the pilots.
Yeah, you had the innovation for both pilots and passengers, but they didn't want to. I didn't remember exactly the specifics, but I remember it was a money thing. They didn't want to lose whatever it was that would have just been that much of a margin on the monies they were making.
They didn't want to lose a row or 2 rows.
Yeah. That's really
so
something.
if you take 1 inch off the seats all the way back to the end of the plane, you're going to lose a couple of rows.
So, Josh, you getting this all done? All of this could be in the movie. All right.
It's all there.
I'm just saying.
It's all there.
Okay. All right.
I hope you're recording it as well.
I am recording it. This is an episode. So, hey, Roger, I love that you spent some time with us and talked to us, and we're excited to kind of keep the audience posted as these developments come together on the state of this latest innovation.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
It was a really cool story. I'll tell you one personal story that I'll leave everybody with Roger involved. And Josh, you can appreciate this because Josh is a musician in addition to everything else. Roger is a pilot, as I said, and he was good friends with the bass player for Huey Lewis and the News, the original bass player, a guy named Mario Cipollina. And he said, hey, we're going to see the Rolling Stones, Mario, his wife, and Heidi and me, and you can get a date. And I'll fly us over, okay, from Marin County to Oakland. It's not far, just across the bay. But, Roger's, you got the flight and got the plane and just want to fly people, I guess. Anyway, we flew and we got into the Stones concert. It was kind of cool. You're going with, this guy who's Huey Lewis and the News, height of their power. So we're there and the Stones are on stage and they play maybe 4 songs. And Mario turns to Roger and says, let's get out of here. I mean, it was a great concert. Mick was doing the thing, the blow-up things on the side. It was, the Stones were also doing, it was.
That'd be the Steel Wheels tour, I believe.
Thank you. I think it was a Steel Wheels tour.
I think you're right.
So Roger turns to me, and he says, Mario wants to leave. And I'm thinking, what? It just started. And I'm also thinking what I know Roger's thinking, which is we can't say no to Mario because he's the big, right?
Yeah.
He's the rock star. Right. He's the rock star here. So we literally left that concert. You remember this, Roger, right? We left this concert and they were playing It's Only Rock and Roll, But I Like It as we left. And I thought that is it's poetic. It's poetic. And we got back in a taxi, which took us to the plane, and we got on the plane, and we flew back across the bay, and we were sitting at dinner while the Stones were still playing in Oakland. Absolute insanity. Absolute insanity. Yeah.
He didn't even bring a new drug with him.
He did not bring a new drug. He was, unfortunately, he was addicted, and life did not go well for him, I don't think. I think they dropped him from the news,
Yeah.
Yeah. But that story, I can't think of you for that night that was to have been so exciting. And it was exciting in its own weird way, the other way, but I really wanted to see the Stones.
Right. But you will never forget, as long as you live, you'll never forget that night.
That is true.
Yeah. You wouldn't have gotten a story if you stayed.
You're right.
It would have just been a concert.
That's right.
So true. So true. All right. Roger Minkow, thank you so much. Great hanging out, great stories, and a remarkable life. So keep on living it. And stay in touch.
Thank you for having me.
Jay Elvis, congratulations on Michael Day Bar. Who do you want me to be?
We can move on from that now.
Oh, I don't need to promote it anymore?
You can promote it, but you don't have to really congratulate me anymore.
Oh, okay. All right. You'll let me know when I can stop promoting it also?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll have to have,
I think it's still got.
I'll have to have a next thing.
Okay. Okay. But for now, you can follow J. Elvis Weinstein on Twitter at J. Elvis Weinstein. Josh, really cool that you could spend time with. That was a cool story, huh? Roger's something. He's really something.
It was, absolutely, yes.
Good luck on your surgery. You'll be here before you have to do
suffered
it.
My dog had the same surgery last week, and now I'm paying for that first. So.
I see. Okay.
He just had spine surgery last week.
You needed a dog, Henry. You needed a Henry
I
for.
really did, yeah.
And I guess that's it. Thank you, guys. Bye. Thank you for listening. If you need to reach the show, it's edgewithmarkthompson@gmail.com. Until next time, bye-bye.